I am so tired of coming on this podcast every single week and telling you to stop playing T.Y. Hilton. Like, just stop it.
Mikey needs help.
Mikey needs help.
I was like, if you don't have Jeff Wilson in here, and if you don't run it on first down, I'm going to strangle you through that TV.
You should know better than everyone else. That fool tears you up when you plays you.
Yeah, but
Don't you want him on your team?
I have him at number 25.
Thank you. Fine. Todd's the reasonable one on this show.
I take issue with everything he said there.
Well,
I really do.
DeAndre Swift. He's going to break them tackles, son.
That's bold. That's bold. That's putting your nuts on the table right there.
Hey, there's the first time for everything.
Waxing poetic over here with Todd Diamond.
Dude's old.
So what? He's not as old as Brady, and you're jerking him off before the show starts.
I have Sutton in my top 10. I have him at number 9.
Yes.
You know what? I'm just canceling the league. I can't do this with you guys. One more week to go before the MHA playoffs. Before we get to week 14, we have to look back on week 13. You're listening to the MHA podcast. Eric Lansing, Mikey Renaud, Todd Diamond. What's up, fellas? How's your week going? Todd?
Fantastic. Ready for 2 days off. I'm ready. I'm ready. But yeah, still can't even give over the hump when I'm like pretty much done kind of thing. So that's great. It's fantastic. It's great.
What does that mean when you can't get off the hump even though you're already done?
I'm out of the playoffs and my team probably had one of its best weeks maybe in a minute, and I still lost. And I still
Scott put up a bunch of points and did not matter.
Yep, did not. Nope, sorry, Bob.
Mikey, how you feeling after coming out with a win on Monday, especially after – we'll talk about it as a whole, but you're still in the playoff race.
Oh, yeah. Feel good to be still playing, but nervous about what's yet to come.
Yes, we'll talk about how that last spot. There are 5 spots that have been clinched. There's one more left, and 4 teams, maybe, depending on how it comes together, have a chance at that last spot. And Mikey will give us that as we go along. Let's get to some MHA news first.
To me, the most amazing thing about the news is that whatever goes on in the world, it exactly fits the number of pages that they're using in the paper that day. Interesting concept.
And we'll start things off with Raiders running back Kenyon Drake. He broke his ankle this past weekend, and he will miss the rest of the season. So that's a big-time boost for Josh Jacobs. And we saw that in his 20-point week this past Sunday for NWA. So that's a nice break for G's team. You hear what I did there? That was pretty good. No? Okay. Adam Thielen dealing with a high ankle sprain. He left his game early, giving Eaton W's just 2 points, and that may have cost him that week. He will also miss this week's game against the Steelers. Dalvin Cook, questionable. Obviously, he's suffering from a shoulder injury that kept him out last week. Tony Pollard, he's kind of had a undervalued season, I would say. And yeah, he's coming off the bench for Zeke, but he's put up some decent point totals this year. He wasn't at practice today. Ezekiel Elliott, who's been dealing with some injuries, he practiced in full today. So we'll see how that all plays out. Curtis Samuel, hampered by a groin injury, was limited today. James Robinson, also limited today. It is Wednesday, I should say, for those who aren't sure when we're putting this out. Darren Waller, still not practicing, dealing with issues in his knee and his back. Mikey did get some good news today, however. Alvin Kamara was a full participant in practice today. He's been dealing with a knee injury that's plagued the Saints running back the last few weeks or so, maybe the past month. Speaking of another running back issues, Saquon was added to the injury report this week, dealing with an ankle problem. All the latest thing I've heard on that is just they're going to monitor it and see how that goes. The Chargers wide receiving core dealing with a COVID outbreak. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams could be out this weekend, but they can also test out of it as both have been vaccinated. David Montgomery dealing with a shoulder, groin, and glute injuries this week. So he's questionable to go, and he had a big week, 20-point week this past week. And Packers star wide receiver Devontae Adams, hamstring problems, and was limited in practice today. So a lot of injuries going on with the playoffs coming up this week. Those who are in the playoffs and have nothing to worry about, then they can just kind of hold their breath and hope that they get healthy by the time we start the playoffs in 2 weeks. All right, let's get into those matchups from this past weekend and how it all shook out. The league's top seed secured the number 1 overall seed. Notorious CUP defeats number 2 seed Eaton W's 147 to 129. Of course, thanks to Melvin Gordon on the shelf, Javonte Williams had his best weekend as a pro. Scored a season-high 25 points. CUP also got big days from Indy's defense, 19 points. And how about Cooper Kupp? 20 points. 8 of his players had 11 or more points. Quain's team is now 11-2, and that was with the day that Patrick Mahomes, I think, had 29 points. So his team going to be tough to deal with, and he's going to have the number 1 seed going forward, which is huge because in our league, if there's a tie, then the number 1 seed moves on, or the higher seed, I should say, moves on. So there's that. That's huge for Quain's squad. In a matchup of 2 teams fighting it out for that final playoff spot, the Hot Tamales eked out a 7-point win over Cooper's Cousins. Kyler Murray finally came back after 3 weeks off due to an injury. The Cardinals quarterback scored a respectable 44 points, while Jalen Waddle continues to have a stellar rookie year. He had 13, and Najee Harris was back on track after a bad week 2 weeks ago. Damian Harris made it interesting on Monday night, scoring a quick 13 points for Cooper's Cousins, but managed only 4 points the rest of the way. So the Tamales are alive for another week with 1 more week to go. Mike, you want to mention anything about your matchup? It was kind of a low-scoring affair, and was there any nerves after Harris or Damian Harris exploded for that long run that put him up to 13 points, I believe, late in the first quarter and early second?
Oh, for sure. I mean, given the weather conditions, I wasn't exactly sure what, if any, I was going to get out of my kicker. So, yeah, very, very nervous. So I knew that he was only going to get points from running the ball, which sometimes for me was like in the back of my head, like, that's a good thing. So, it's not going to be easy to do it that way without him catching passes. But yeah, definitely nervous, glad to come out with the win, and now ready to see what this next week brings. Whole new set of challenges.
The Patriots in that game threw 3 times. That's incredible. That was a wild, kind of a weird, there's snow and wind and elements that just were hard to throw in. And lucky for Mikey, considering that he only got 17 points, considering how much they ran the ball. But they also ran Ramondre Stevenson as well. Todd, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say the fact they only threw 3 times. I think they said that was like an NFL like first or record or something, that like a quarterback only threw like 3 passes or something. So that's just that's I mean, yeah. And for how long football's been around, that 2021 it finally happened.
Yeah, considering back in the day, like before the pass was even invented, really. But, at least in the NFL, maybe that was more of a college thing. All right, back to the matchups. Another team vying for that 6th spot, Lion Rip, had an easy weekend, taking on an already playoff-bound Lemonhead squad. My squad is dealing with a ton of injuries. No Michael Carter, no DeAndre Swift. Kareem Hunt was on a bye. And once Dak and Amari Cooper had just terrible nights on Thursday night, I didn't really have to worry about the rest of the weekend. I knew I was in for a loss, but luckily I'm already in. For Aaron, though, he picks up an important win, and he's right there for a playoff spot. Kilgore Trout pulled off a 1-point win over the Butterfingers to keep their slim playoff hopes alive. Justin Jefferson doesn't seem to be suffering from any kind of a sophomore slump. He piles up 25 points versus Detroit. Devonta Freeman, just some sort of rejuvenation type season. He scores 18 points, 4 straight wins for Joe's team. Butterfinger scored their highest point total since week 2, but it wasn't enough. 153 to 152 was the final. Todd, you want to mention anything about your matchup this week?
Well, it looks like if you just give the ball to Miles Sanders, he gets you points. Isn't that a nice concept to do? But yeah, and George Kittle, hey, like I said, if I didn't have to worry about tight ends, 30 points from him. So yeah, I mean, it's probably the best I've gotten, from my team, like you said, since week 2. 22 from Godwin was the other one. It was on the debate between if I should play Van Jefferson or Elijah Moore. I mean, Van Jefferson got 14, Elijah Moore got 15, so there wasn't a big difference between the two. But yeah, I wish my team would do this every single week.
Lose by 1?
Hey, that's the difference between Moore and Jefferson.
That is correct. Did Todd win Doe of the Week? We'll have to come back to that later. The
Well,
defending
it would have been a tie. It would have been a tie, right?
but
It would
not,
have just.
but not a loss.
But well, I'm gonna have to have a conversation with
Mhm.
Jamar. I'm gonna have to have a conversation with
Mhm.
Jamar Chase because this T
Oh, I'm
Higgins thing.
sure. It's T.
I'm not. I'm
Higgins.
fucking. Hey, what? Really? Come on. But hey, I'm still gonna win the bet. So that's. I keep saying that
Oh,
every single
Lord.
week.
Jeez.
I'm.
Whoa, wait a minute. I did some digging into that. And
Ooh,
Oh
thank
not so
God.
God.
fast. Not so fast. All of a sudden, Jamar Chase has been slipping. He's all the way down. We talked a couple weeks ago about this. He was like top 5, and now he slipped down to 14,
Because
Uh-oh.
what? Because the bet was he had to finish in the top
25.
25. So he's 14 right now.
Yeah,
I ain't nervous. I ain't nervous. I ain't nervous.
he
I'm
hasn't
not
had a.
nervous.
He hasn't been. These last couple weeks, he's been slipping.
Yeah, he's fine. It's fine. It'll be fine. Fine.
Anyways, we're talking a lot about nonsensical, non-important stuff right
Yeah.
now, but fine. Jamar Chase is not doing great. The defending champs, they came out and put the final touches on Bishop Sycamore's season. The NWA got 87 points from Deontay Johnson, T. Higgins, speaking of, Antonio Gibson, and Josh Jacobs. All of those guys had 20 or more points. 156 to 124 was your final. The NWA is in a battle to try to snag away that second seed from Eaton W's. The Gonzo Cats are in the playoffs and are fighting for a higher seed. They pounded the Belt Sanders 151 to 133. The Gonzo Cats arguably have the league's best running back in Jonathan Taylor. And then David Montgomery had a great week as well. They combined for 49 points. Belt Sanders got 50 points from Russell Wilson, who had just his second 50-point game on the season. Not the season that Allen thought the Seahawks would have after what they did for Aaron last year. So let's talk about the Doe of the Week. Is it going to be Todd? I mean, it's always tough. He only lost by 1 point. But unfortunately, that's where mistakes can be made up. I looked through each of these matchups and didn't see another one. Did anybody else? Like Cooper's cousin only lost by 7, but I think he made all the right moves.
Yeah, he could. There's not a whole lot that he could have done.
Yeah. And some of them were more kind of the 20 to 30 point range. And, you look at Belt Sanders because he only lost. And I mean, his best guy was Garoppolo off the bench, and he didn't outscore Russell Wilson. Todd, I don't know. Is that 2 weeks in a row for you?
Oh my God! Might as well just rename my team Doe of the Week or what the hell? That's what I should just name my team next year.
I mean, it's fitting, right? Butterfingers. That's a Simpsons candy, right?
Yeah. It's fair. It's very
I felt
true.
bad for Todd because he ended up losing because Jerry Judy collected a bunch of garbage points at the end.
He did.
But you know what? It actually would. It would have been nice. Yeah, if he would have. I know you got I know he was going to get the garbage points, but the Broncos would have won that game. Maybe it wouldn't have been. But
that's why they're garbage points, because they didn't matter except to you.
Could have won that one, but yeah. What the hell? Doe of the Week. Doe. 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 Doe.
Sorry, Todd. I also find it funny because of George Kittle. Probably had the best weekend of any tight end this year. I tried looking it up. I couldn't find it. But at least I didn't see a better week by a tight end. And it still didn't matter. That's funny to me, not to you. But
yeah. It's okay. But at least, hey, it's the way fantasy football is, and there's gonna be more. There's gonna be put it this way. There's gonna be more does than there are gonna be woohoos. So
it's not the best week by a tight end, but
it's not. Who had the best week as a tight end? Knox.
It was Mark Andrews.
Okay.
That Monday night game against the Colts, he had 34.
Well done, Miguel. On top of it. That's why you're the co-host of this show. Todd just shows up. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's see if Todd can turn things around in some MHA trivia.
If my answers frighten you, Vincent, then you should cease asking scary questions. I'm gonna take it.
Probably
Ready
not,
for-
but let's give it a try.
Probably not. Todd.
I'm just
Oh,
this is not my season at all. This is not my season. And I was thinking, okay, get ready for get ready for fantasy baseball because guess what? I might even have a freaking baseball season because they can't even get their shit together.
Oh, calm down. They have plenty of time to figure all that out. It's only December, for God's sakes.
Yeah, well, sometimes that December can, before you know, it'll be freaking.
Todd, when was the last time they had a strike?
94.
Yeah, relax. I think that there's so much money in baseball right now. I think they'll figure it out. Let's get to that MHA trivia, and we're going to talk about touchdown leaders, and we're not going to talk about quarterback touchdowns. It's total touchdowns, both receiving, running, and any receiving that or returning if that ends up into the factors. You guys ready for this? So I'm just gonna let you guys go. We'll go back and forth. If you get one of those in the top 12 right, then you get the point. And whoever gets to 5 points first wins MHA trivia. Okay? All right. Let's let Todd go first. He's had a rough day so far. So Todd, just give me a name in the top 12 touchdown leaders in the NFL up to this point.
Jonathan Taylor.
That is correct. In fact, he is number 1. He's got 18 total touchdowns. What a season Jonathan Taylor has had. So Todd gets a point. Mikey, your turn.
Circle gets a square. I'll go with James Conner.
James Conner, 3rd on the list in total touchdowns. He had another touchdown this past week. So Conner, 14 total touchdowns. What a jackass. I really hate him. But Mikey gets the point, and we're tied 1-1. All right, back to you, Todd.
Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon, correct. Joe Mixon has 14 touchdowns, so tied with James Conner. Well done. Todd goes up 2-1. Chance here for Mikey to tie. Your turn.
I'll say Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp, 5th overall. He's got 11 touchdowns. The wide receiver had another big weekend, scoring over 20 points. He continues to have a great year. We're tied 2-2. Back to you, Todd.
I will go with Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase, not on the top 12 list. So I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Jamar Chase, we know you love him. You don't get the point. So Mikey, a chance to go up 3-2 here with the correct answer. What you got for me, Miguel?
I'm going to go with the dude that's been hot lately. I'm going to go with Leonard Fournette.
That is correct. He's actually tied for 10th with 9. So just above Jamar Chase in his 8. So Mikey goes up 3-2. Todd, you need to get one here. Give me an answer.
Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson. No, that is incorrect. He is not on the list here. He's got 7 total touchdowns. So another wrong answer for Todd Diamond. Back to you, Miguel. You could take control of this game for the correct answer.
It would make sense that one of those stupid running receiving duo guys that NWA has is going to be in here. So I'm going to go with Deebo Samuel.
Deebo Samuel, correct. He's got 10 touchdowns. He's had an incredible season, dealing with some injuries right now, but double digits. Who would have thought of that at the beginning of the season? I don't think anybody here on this broadcast thought so. So Mikey is up 4-2. Todd, you need one in the worst way right now just to stay in it.
Let's go with Cordell Patterson.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That is incorrect. Cordero Patterson, not amongst those here in this top 12. Patterson, he's got 9 total touchdowns. I'm going to give you credit. They didn't have him on the list I was looking at. He's got 4 rushing touchdowns and 5 receiving touchdowns. So good job there, Todd. 9 total touchdowns. He picks up his 3rd point. So it's 4-3, but Mikey can win it with a correct answer here.
Oh, here it comes.
Give me the guy that scored 4 touchdowns against Todd on Sunday night. I'm going to go with Austin Eckler.
And that's the game winner, Austin Eckler, 2nd. He's got 15 total touchdowns on the season. So as Todd's catchphrase goes, just can't win.
Yep,
good job, Miguel.
Yeah, good job, Mikey.
Well, that's nice. That's good. That's some good sportsmanship.
Sure.
Not happy about
You
it.
know, it's more of just I don't want to. I on this podcast we try to keep it clean. So I instead of just cussing and saying every word possible, I'm gonna say good job, Mike. That's what it is. Good job.
Attaboy. That's what it's all about.
Exactly.
So Mikey wins MHA trivia. And now we'll get to some RMAC RMAC. I even have RMAC standings typed.
That's twice.
That is twice in 2 weeks. I typed RMAC standings.
Really?
Let's talk about what's that?
You actually type
It's
that's
in
awesome.
there as RMAC standings.
That's cool.
Shows I'm in basketball mode, I guess, as we get ready. Actually, we're in conference play now. Anyway, let's talk about some MHA standings. We mentioned Notorious CUP. They clinch the number 1 overall seed. They're 11-2. They've won 7 in a row. In second place, Eaton W's at 9-4. But on his heels, the NWA, who are also at 9-4. And you could say heels in terms of record, but 1806 to 1746, the point total. And that's the tiebreaker. So Eaton W's and NWA battling for that number 2 seed. In the 4th spot, Gonzo Cats at 8-5. Lemonheads also 8-5. Point differentials. The Lemonheads have not put up decent point totals the last 2 weeks, so that might end up being. They could definitely tie some things up here, but in terms of the points, that might be difficult. So in the 6th spot currently, Lion Rip at 6-7 with 1,670 points. In 7th place, Mikey Renault, 6-7, 1,600 points, right on the nose, so a 70-point difference. And the other team battling there at 5-8, Cooper's Cousins. Now he's got 1,678 points. So the scenarios that line up, Mikey, you want to give the audience what's going to have to happen? Well, just tell me how everything's going to line up this week. How does every one of those 3 teams get into the playoffs this week?
Okay, so this is relatively simple. So if Aaron wins, Lion Rip wins, he's in, no matter what. Pretty easy for him. If he loses and I win, then I'm in. Pretty simple there.
Sounds awesome.
Now, if he loses and I lose and Cooper's Cousins win and he maintains that lead in the points category over Aaron, then he's in.
Simple enough, right?
So I suppose the other scenario I forgot. I didn't mention it, but I guess I will, because you never know in this league, anything can happen. Me and Aaron could both win, and somehow I outscore him by 70. Then I would overtake him. But
that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I mean, they could have a week like me, but then you'd still have to put up a big total. The week I had last week where I barely put up 74 points. So there's that possibility, but yeah, anything can happen. And you talk about who they play this week. You talk about Lion Rip. They take on Cooper's Cousins. So there's that. And then Hot Tamales are going to take on the Belt Sanders. And Belt Sanders, not playing terrible the last few weeks. So I don't think it's going to be as easy as 3-10 looks on paper, but they put up some decent point totals the last couple of weeks and have won 2 of the last 3 games. So there's that. Kilgore Trout has an outside chance of getting in. He would need a lot of things to happen, right, Miguel?
Yeah, I mean, his scenario actually,
it's not as far fetched as you think.
He would have to basically. He needs Aaron to lose. He needs me to lose. He would have to outscore Cooper's Cousins in that scenario. He would also have to outscore Aaron in that scenario. So, yeah, I mean, it's difficult.
It is
not impossible. But
it's
difficult.
not impossible because he would have to outscore Aaron by 34 points. Not impossible there. And then if you talk about Cooper's Cousins, so 34, 41 points. So not impossible. He's still in it. He was complaining to me today that, well, while it's far-fetched, I'm also hurting my draft stock next year. And I was like, you don't need to worry about draft stock next year. Look at those top 3 running backs that got drafted. They're all hurt. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Try to get into those playoffs, Joe. You're doing a great job. He's won 4 in a row.
I mean, the important part for you, Todd, is you're not going to get the number 1 pick, and you should be happy about that.
You know,
it has not worked out for the owners the last couple of years.
You know, the one thing that I think I've got the number 1 pick once, I think, in the league. I have to go back and look and see. But I'm at least proud of myself that I've had some bad years, but it's never been bad where I've, gotten the number 1 pick multiple times. So I could, it's a small victory. You know me, it's small victories that, that I'm like, it's somewhat.
Well, I mean, you play Miles, and it's kind of interesting because you guys are playing for 2 versus 3.
Mm-hmm. Oh, lovely.
There you go. Whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some top performances of the week. And Mikey, who stood out to you this week?
Oh man, I was going to go with who didn't stand out for me first, but
do you want to go? We can go with worst performances.
Yeah, Mo, that team sure did suck last night. They just plain sucked. I've seen teams suck before, but they were the suckiest bunch of sucks that ever sucked.
You want to go with worst performances?
Yeah, why not?
Let's do it. No, let's talk about those terrible those athletes who didn't step up when people needed them the most.
So, and the only reason I wanted to do this because it helped me. So, after being so great over the past couple weeks, finally got that dud game when I needed it from Joe Mixon.
Correct. That was one of the guys on my list.
Yeah, he was so incredible the previous 4 weeks, and then ends up with a 9, which really helped me overtake Cooper's Cousins this week. He had a fumble included in that too, so not against a Chargers defense that's been getting shredded by the run. I was so worried about that, and hey, it turned out my way.
Put up a stinker. His first single-digit game since week 2. We mentioned the last 4 weeks have been 20 or more points in each of those weeks. So definitely one of the worst performances of the week. Todd, give me a worst performance.
Well, I don't know if you can really blame it, but Dawson Knox. I mean, the weather, I get it. The weather looked like it, Mother Nature needed a hug or something. But only 2 points for Dawson Knox after 2 weeks. Obviously last week against New Orleans, he had 16, consistent, but only putting up 2 points. I mean, yeah, you get what you can from tight ends, but that was a bad one. That was bad.
Yep, the weather definitely played a factor in really that whole game. Although, there was a couple people Stephon Diggs did all right. I'm also going to go to the Eaton W's well and talk about my favorite guy I love to crap on, Terry McLaurin. He only put up 4 points in that game against Vegas, who they give up a decent amount of points to wide receivers. And in fact, McLaurin struggling as of late. He had a 16-point performance 2 weeks ago, but in the 4 games outside of that, 5, 8, 6, and then 4. And so it's not a surprise for Eaton W's, who have struggled of late. They've lost 2 in a row, and I believe it's like last 3 of 4. Yeah, the last 3 of 4 games for Eaton W's. And so Terry McLaurin coming back down to earth, maybe crashing back down to earth. He was one of the better receivers to start the season, and it's cooled off immensely. Mikey, do you have another guy that just crapped the bed this week?
Oh, how about your duo of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill combining for 7 points against the Broncos? I mean, I know that the Denver defense is good, but I think you had to be expecting a little bit more out of that duo.
At that point, and just being honest, at that point, I didn't care. I was kind of happy that the Broncos were at least in it till the very end, and for their defense to step up the way they did in Kansas City, and the weather was fine. It was definitely surprising. I wasn't expecting anything, so I wasn't upset about it, but it's definitely strange to see that those two who have been pretty good for most of the season, obviously Tyreek Hill's the second best wide receiver in terms of scoring in our league, and Kelce the number 1 guy. I was fine with it. If you're going to crap the bed, do it this week when it doesn't matter as much. So, but though, yeah, I mean, it definitely glares when you're looking at worst performances. Todd, do you have another one?
I'll go with one more from you guys from your team, but Mari Cooper, only 4 points.
Yeah. You could really go Prescott and Cooper on that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, more like Cooper, because if Cooper really is the number 1 wide receiver on that for that
I don't
Cowboys,
know if he is anymore. I think Lamb.
You think Lamb's going to be? Well, they're paying Cooper enough money, but anyway, I'll say Cooper just because, again, for obviously what they're paying him to do. You know, you're not paying Lamb yet, but you're right. Lamb's probably going to start to leapfrog Cooper for that number 1 spot.
Man, oh man, all this crap falling on me. Is this what it's like to be Todd? It smells around here.
Welcome to my world. We have meetings every single Tuesday. You know, it's great. Hello, I got crapped on again.
The last one I'll only mention is just because this person got a goose egg, and it's not totally his fault, but Nelson Aguilar. Mac Jones only threw 3 passes in a game that it kind of needed. So, yeah, Nelson Aguilar, not a great weekend. He hasn't been really great all year, and for somebody who had him last year, he was definitely touchdown dependent. But it's hard to blame him. That whole game and the passing was terrible, and Belt Sanders and his season, but he definitely could have used him to help out, and even if it was just a little bit. Todd, let's go to some top performances. Who was great? Who stepped up and really helped their teams kind of, whether it's get into the playoffs or get closer to the playoffs? Who was good?
Well, I think, and this player is going to be fantasy and reality come next year, is Javonte Williams, Denver Broncos. Give him the damn ball. Give him the ball. Melvin Gordon, who? No. Javonte Williams is going to be at 25 points against in Kansas City. Prime time, the bright lights. This guy is the real deal. He might get drafted maybe in the close to maybe the first or second round next year. So Javonte Williams, and that was another one of the board bets that me and Mikey had. That Javonte Williams might outrush Melvin Gordon. So I'll say Javonte Williams for the top performer.
Yeah, 102 rushing yards, 6 receptions, had that receiving touchdown. Melvin Gordon injured, and he took full advantage on 23 attempts. Do you agree that Javonte Williams will be a second-round pick next year, Mikey? Too early to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on what happens. I mean, Melvin Gordon's a free agent, so you would think that Javonte Williams would be the number 1 back and that Gordon would be gone, but you never know.
Yep, so true. So true. Mikey, give me someone that stood out to you.
I'm going to show some love to Antonio Gibson. This is now, at this point, 3 out of the last 4 weeks that he's been above not only 20 points, but 20 rushing attempts, which it just, goes to show you at this point that, Washington's giving him more of the full load and not necessarily relying as much. And I know McKissick was hurt, but not relying as much on him. And he's starting to show out. And this is what people were expecting out of Gibson, going into drafts. You heard people talking about maybe he should be an end of the first round type guy or early second round type guy. And he really wasn't showing that for most of this year, but he's coming on strong when NWA really needs him at the end.
NWA drafted him at the end of the first round, if I'm not mistaken, or I don't know if he was the top one in the second round, but he was an early round pick, and I questioned it. I can't speak for the rest of you guys, but I definitely questioned it, and just with the other backs that are on there. But give him credit; he's starting to turn things around here for that Washington football team. So Gibson was one of those guys. I didn't even realize until I saw on Twitter that he leads the NFC in rushing. That's how good his season has come along. I was gonna mention T. Higgins, 2 straight weeks in double figures, taking those points away from Jamar Chase and of course Tyler Boyd, but 17 and 21 points. He's starting to figure it out. Another NWA guy, so he's starting to see some of his guys who have struggled kind of midway through the season to come along late. And boy, no better time than the present to see those guys firing on all cylinders. Todd, do you have another guy?
Well, yes, I do, and this is more on the losing side, but freaking Tom Brady. I mean, dude just keeps doing it. 74 points. Now, granted, yes, it was against Atlanta. I mean, mediocre quarterbacks could probably put up maybe close to that point total, but 74 points from Tom Brady, that's ridiculous. He just keeps on doing it. Even after last week when he put up 38. And that was his lowest, total of the year. And then he's like, "All right, I can fix this," and puts up 74 points. So it's crazy.
Yep, Tom Brady's good. Mikey, who else was good last week?
I'm going to give love to my own guy here, and that's Jalen Waddle, who is now the top rookie wide receiver. Not Jamar Chase, like Todd Diamond would lead you to believe, ladies and gentlemen. It is Jalen Waddle, who is now the top scoring rookie wide receiver, who now, has at least 8 receptions in 4 of his last 5 games, and he's just turning into a target monster. Tua loves him. It's that connection they had in Alabama, and it's going to suck with him being on a bye in a game that I really need this week. But I wanted to show
that question.
Just wanted to show him some love.
No, Mike, you and I have been on the same page with a lot of these. Like Waddle was on there as well. He's 13th amongst all wide receivers, not just rookies. So he has been tremendous. And yeah, Tua loves that guy. Last one I'll mention, and just, when you lose your running back, especially your first round pick, and Kilgore Trout lost Dalvin Cook, but man, I don't know if Alexander Madison is the best backup running back. Maybe he's up there with Tony Pollard, but he put up 19 points in a week that he absolutely needed. 90 rush yards, had a rushing touchdown, 3 receptions. That's clutch. And you think, well, I lost Dalvin Cook. Maybe I don't have a chance, but Madison has put double figures together in back-to-back weeks. And this week was huge for Kilgore Trout, who's still alive, still's got a pulse for those playoffs. All right. So any other performances that you guys want to mention? Bad, good, or ugly, surprising? Anything you guys want to mention?
Devontae Freeman.
Yeah. He's kind of I don't know where he's come from. I don't know what this season or what's going on with him, but he's been incredibly productive.
This is early Devontae Freeman and what he was when he was in Atlanta. You're right, Eric. It's a head scratcher. It's a head scratcher. Like, I mean, nobody would have thought that. First of all, the way that carousel of Ravens running backs, whether it came to injuries or just playing the hot hand, because again, I think none of us really wanted to touch that backfield, because I mean there was already injuries going down before the season even started. I mean, Tyson Williams probably was going to be the lead back, and I mean I drafted him like, oh, this is great, I'd get the golden ticket here because he's going to be and he kind of fell off and ended up trading him for George Kittle, which worked out for a little bit for me. So yeah, Devontae Freeman, and then because they brought in Le'Veon Bell, and and so forth. I mean, they were just picking people off the street just to, just somebody who just had a pulse at a certain point. So yeah, Devontae Freeman, who'd have thunk it? But it's the way, running backs, like I always say, aren't a dime a dozen. So sometimes you gotta pick a lot of them and hope one of them, no pun intended, shines bright.
How's that a pun?
Because diamonds shine bright. I don't know.
Yeah, just kind of going back to, I think that's just, it shows how important running backs are in the Ravens offense.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of us were super excited. I was thrilled. I was hoping to have J.K. Dobbins on my team, get him in that 3rd or 4th round, because they rely so heavily, and they had so many injuries, as you mentioned, that Freeman has stepped in, and despite his age or how long ago it was that he was productive on a weekly basis, and now look at him. And I mean, 14 carries, 16. It's not even 20, but he's finding the end zone. He's catching some passes and doing pretty well for Kilgore Trout. Let's see if he can do it again next week. Mike, anything else you want to mention?
Well, I just something to keep an eye on, and just to how impressive that Cooper Cup season continues to be.
Yeah.
He's at 230 points. I believe that the record is Randy Moss's 2007, which is 304 points. So with 5 weeks to go, I mean, there's a chance, if he continues his pace, that Cooper Cup, may take that record.
That is so surprising. It's and now I don't get to watch we've had so many Sunday games, as you guys know. So I don't get to watch a lot of games, or maybe I'm not keeping up with the shows during the week, the NFL shows. But is it just me, or is it under the radar? I mean, he's got 100 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And with 5 weeks left to go, are they just not playing it up as much? Or, I mean, you hear all the time about Justin Jefferson and obviously Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, but is Cooper Kupp just not getting the love as maybe Randy Moss was getting during his season?
Because you just answered your own question there, because he's not Randy Moss, because Randy Moss was flashy and was always, straight cash, homie. And Cooper Kupp just goes out there and, kind of just does his job, and everything. And he doesn't have these spectacular catches like Randy Moss, or, kind of doesn't showboat as much. And that's probably why it's it's under the radar. Now, you would think, being in Los Angeles, the bright lights, Hollywood, that it would be magnified, but it's really not, because he really just goes out there and does his job. He's another version of like Wes Welker. Like Wes Welker, it wasn't flashy, but he'd get you catches, he'd get you touchdowns, and so forth. I mean, I'm not comparing the two as much, but just of that under the radar type situation where it's like, all right, what he's going to get you, and he's going to get you a lot of receptions. He's going to get you touchdowns, because Cooper Kupp can play on the outside and the inside, so could Welker. So kind of, if you're going to look at that dynamic right there, that comparison, I think is why he's not. So if he breaks the record, if he breaks Randy Moss's record, great. But I don't know if he's, if it's going to be celebrated as much as what Randy Moss did, in that 2007 season.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp, 10 or more targets in all but one game this year, which is just ridiculous. What do you have to say about it, Miguel? Anything?
Well, I think it's so amazing. Like, he's 50 points ahead of the second place. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I think the other thing too is that he's just not a flashy guy himself.
Mm-hmm. No.
Like when we were watching, I think it was Hard Knocks with them a couple of years ago. Like, he was never in the storylines. He was never one to talk or get involved, and maybe he's just not making the spectacular catches. But he has an incredible rapport with Stafford, who came in and just has lifted the offense. And I know they've had their struggles this year, but Cooper Kupp is definitely not. let's get into these next week's schedule. We talked about these a little bit, but we'll go over it one more time. 5-8 Cooper's Cousins will take on 6-7 Lion Rip. Obviously, that's huge for the playoffs, as we mentioned. 6-7 Hot Tamales, hoping Aaron's team falters. But they would also need to win. They'll take on Allen's Belt Sanders. We mentioned hasn't been playing awful the last few weeks despite his 3-10 record. Kilgore Trout needs a lot to happen. They have second place Eaton W's on the schedule. We mentioned Kevin's team has lost 3 or 4. I'm taking on Gonzo Cats. That might be a playoff preview in the first round, as we're kind of in that 4 or 5 spot. Perhaps MHA Championship preview on deck in Week 14. Notorious CUP and the NWA going toe-to-toe. And in a matchup with only draft positioning on the line, 4-9, Butterfingers and Bishop Sycamore duke it out in the Toilet Bowl. Teams on bye next week: Colts, Dolphins, Patriots, and Eagles. So no Carson Wentz for Todd. No Jonathan Taylor against me this week. That's exciting. No Jalen Waddle, as Mikey mentioned. No Damian Harris. No Devonta Smith, whom also would be playing against. No Miles Sanders. No Mac Jones. So there you have it. The recap of Week 13 in the books. Next week, Week 14, the last week of the regular season. Let's go.
Yeah. Playoff.
No, Todd,
draft.
Todd, you don't get to go, Todd.
Yeah, Todd,
Okay.
you're done.
You're in the back seat.
I'm back. Todd, just be quiet. Just be quiet back there. Just shh. Here go. Here's an here's an iPad. Just be quiet. Okay.
The most
Yep.
exciting part of this is that Monday night could play a factor. Can't ask for more than that.
Coming down to Monday night. And we have no games this weekend. So that's exciting. So some of us can watch some NFL. I don't know if Todd's got to work on Sunday, but no Metro games. We all work Metro games, and especially after last week where we had 11 broadcast, or we broadcasted 11 games in 4 days. It'd be good to have a nice weekend off. So yeah, there's that.
For sure.
For sure. All right, gentlemen, if there's nothing else left to be said, thanks for coming on here on Wednesday night. Another MHA podcast in the books. And then next week, we'll talk about some playoff previews. So that should be fun as well. So for Todd Diamond, Mikey Renault, Eric Lansing, we'll see you next week on the MHA podcast.